Hello and welcome to PMCLounge.com. Today we have Jack with us who has recently cleared his PMP exam and he's here to share his experience and his tips and tricks of the trade, how you can also benefit from his experience and pass your PMP exam. So thank you so much, Jack, for taking the time out and joining us today.
Thank you, Shoaib, for having me. Always a pleasure. Actually, a big fan of yours and your PMC Lounge website. So thank you very much as well.
Not a problem. Thank you so much. So, Jack, before we get started, if you could let us know a bit about your experience and career so far at a very high level, where what you have been working on and what your role is like.
Sure, not a problem. So I've been in the same company for 15 years now. I've worked for 12 years in operations. I was having teams in charge, mainly in P2P, promise to pay, financial type of roles. Um, During this time, I was very, very interested in moving into a more dynamic role in my company. So that's where I got interested in project management. So for the past 3 years, I've had a PMO role in my company.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. So, I think you touched upon a bit why you went for PMP certification because you are into this PMO role. Any other specific reasons why you thought, I'll go for PMP and not any other certification out there?
No, actually, when I moved into the role that I was telling you about,
Hmm.
I was like a junior PMO, and I was
Okay.
given the opportunity just because I had a lot of operations experience and some project management experience, but not very, very good. So whenever I started on a PMO role, I said I need to upskill myself. I want to grow professionally, and that's where I started looking for what type of certifications are there.
Hmm.
And the first thing I found was that the PMP certification was the most accepted and most, looked up by everyone in the industry. So also, all the people everywhere were looking for PMP certified personnel. And when you start reading about PMP and getting to know what this certification is about, this is a very serious certification that is very important all across the world. So I wanted to upskill myself professionally, and um, I'm surrounded by very experienced professionals in my company, so I wanted to kind of catch up as well in being knowledgeable.
Hmm. Awesome,
That's
awesome. Yeah, that's I think a really good approach to look at how this certification can help you out and how you can benefit. Now, while we were talking earlier, you mentioned about not being able to pass the exam in the first go. So we understand the situation. You are into this PMO. You are surrounded by these experienced professionals. You decided to take up the PMP, but something went wrong. Can you tell us more, like what went wrong there in your first go at the PMP?
Sure, not a problem. So, I think the most important part of the first try was that was really, really nervous. I didn't know what to expect from the exam, and my first attempt was the online version. We were during COVID, so I thought it was a good idea, but the expectation of not knowing what to expect from an online test, you're nervous that your internet connection will break,
Mhm.
or that there are a lot of external factors that do not depend on you that will probably come into play. And I think that I spent most of my time during the exam worrying if I was going to pass it or not, and not really focused on answering the questions. I knew by the time I sat down with at the exam that I had to be very, very focused and concentrated on the answers. That was not the case. Also, another external factor that was coming to play very big was that where I live, it's very calm. There's no noise around and all that. So I was relaxed. But that day, there were doing some work at my neighbors, and there were
Oh my.
chainsaws cutting trees. So you could hear, the engines all the time going, and that was losing my focus. And that was a lot of things. I think that I needed to be more prepared, more secure of myself, and knowing that I have to sit and concentrate during the first attempt.
Yeah, I personally advise everyone to take the exam from exam center. And I
Yes,
think this is actually a really good example of what all can actually go wrong if you're working from home. You never know, right? I have had people who have given their experiences that they were alone at home, and someone, I mean, their delivery person came in, right? And they were alone at home, so they didn't know how to take that delivery. You have to receive that delivery, and there's no one at home. You cannot get up, and your phone is
exactly.
ringing, which is in the other room. So it's all a mess, and that is why I highly advise everyone to take the exam from the exam center. That is how we have grown up as taking exams, right? You go to the school to
Yes,
take the exam, you go to your college to take the exam. You don't write exams from home. So that mindset shift needs to happen. Your mind need to be in that exam zone to be prepared and take that exam. So yeah, I mean, love that answer,
exactly.
and thank you so much for sharing that. But let's talk about your more about your PMP preparation journey as such. So how much time did you take to prepare for the exam? What are some of the books and resources that you made use of?
Sure. So, we, let's take in consideration that I studied two times, let's say, as I mentioned, my
Yeah.
first attempt. I prepared for the first attempt, I would say I invested around 150 hours of studying. A lot of hours there, mainly reading the PM book, the PM book
Hmm.
6. And I also got the opportunity to go into Rita's book, which I didn't like so much at the beginning. I thought it was a bit complicated to understand, but mainly I was focusing only on the PM book. Then, when I prepared myself the second time, this is where I did a lot of changes in my studying methods. And that's where I found, PMC Lounge and other resources out there where I thought, yes, sitting and reading the PM book will get you some knowledge, but it's a bit boring for me. I need to have more interaction. I need to see someone explain me a graph, the concepts. And that's where I said I need to, look for more resources out there. And the first thing you look for are the free resources, of course.
Yep.
So um, I used a lot of resources out there. I did the course two times, the 35 contact hour two times. Let's say
Hmm.
the first time was with the company I work with. There's a university that provided the course, but after that I used Andrew Ramdayal's course in Udemy.
Hmm.
Um, I did not pay for that course just because in my company we have free access to Coursera, Udemy, Pluralsight,
Awesome.
and all of those resources. So I said, let's take advantage of what I already have.
Yep.
So I used that course. So I did that course two times. I saw all your videos in PMC Lounge just because there's a lot of concepts that need to be understood that are very, very good explaining your videos that you will not find it anywhere else. No, any other book, any other videos in YouTube, other people
Hmm.
who are also doing videos. The concepts are very explaining your videos. That's why I pretty much saw them all.
Okay.
There's a community in Reddit, the app, where there's a lot of PMP aspirants who are sharing ideas. And I went there and saw that everybody was talking about some user notes. The user was called Third Rock, and I was like, "What is this? What is this?" And it's just a user from Reddit who did two sheets, Google Sheets, that he sells for a small price. And I said, "Okay, I'll pay for that." And those notes are really good. I mean, I was sitting reading the PM book and writing down my own notes. I thought that I was wasting my time a little bit just because those notes are very, very good. If anyone is interested to go to Reddit and look out there because everybody talks about it, then I do recommend the notes for studying, for the exam, for preparing your mindset, how to tackle the questions. I think those are very, very good documents. So a lot of documents that I use, as you see, and
Awesome.
resources that I use to prepare myself. So in total, I would say I use 250 hours of study.
Wow, wow. Yeah, but I think, yeah, I mean, good enough to be able to prepare yourself. And not just that, I mean, it's not just about passing an exam and then be done with it. Because back to your first answer, I really liked the approach that you had. Being able to work with all these senior people, all these people who have a lot of experience in project management, and to be able to speak the language that they speak, that I think is a fantastic goal to have, to be able to do your PMP. And that is where you've spent so much time studying about it, that you are now sort of not just pass the exam but also able to speak the language of project management. Now,
Exactly.
while you were studying for PMP, did you identify any areas or any knowledge areas or processes or anything that you thought, this requires additional attention, this requires additional effort, anything like that?
Yes. So I thought that all the agile part of it, all the hybrid and knowledge that is now in the exam, it used not to be in the exam before.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, in PM Box 6 was not, having much of this knowledge there. So I thought there's a lot of things I need to know. I want to know about Scrum. I want to know about Kanban. And if you see in the book, it's very briefly mentioned and not very well discussed. So that's where I thought I need to focus more on this because this is new for me. I know that also by experience in the type of industry I work, mainly waterfall is the type of methodology that is used or framework that is used. Um, and I said that's the reason why I don't know much about agile. It's because it's mainly used in software industry, which is not my expertise. So I said I need to learn about this. That's the area that I needed to focus on a bit because I had no experience and not much
Right.
knowledge before studying.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that answer, because a lot of people who take up the PMP exam, especially those who are from the IT or the software background, they are pretty much already aware of Agile. They already have Agile related certifications with them, and now they are coming for PMP. So it's the exact opposite of what you mentioned. So they want to know more about waterfall, and those are the kind of areas that they focus more on. But yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it helps understand if you are coming from other industries that are not using Agile, then yeah, that is one area that you should focus more on. Now, did you take up any mock exams, mock tests?
Yes, I did.
How many?
I did. So I used the PMI's study hall app
Hmm.
where I went through the lessons and all of that and didn't want to start with the questions until I was done with the lessons. But to be very honest, I did, I would say around 1,200 questions inside
Wow.
the app.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, one of the lessons learned from the first attempt was that you need to understand the mindset that PMI wants you to have or for a PMP certification. And that mindset only gets if you fully understand all the concepts. So
Right.
you first need to study and get all the knowledge in your head so you can start thinking in a way in order to answer the questions. And it was very complicated. A lot of friends were approaching me in the office and say, I heard that you're studying for a PMP. And I'm like, yes. So how hard it is. And I was showing them in my computer. So you have this question and all four answers look correct at the
Look correct.
first
Yeah.
time you read them. So how do you make a choice? Because all of this seems correct. And then I was like, explaining the mindset to others. And that's how I also was studying at the same time, and you
Hmm.
need to do this and this. So I was making sure that I had a lot of experience answering questions because I thought the first time that it was very hard for me to, actually land on an answer very convinced by
Hmm.
choosing it. And that's where I said I need to do a lot of answers. So,
Awesome.
question. So I did a lot of questions. Every day I was doing 20 questions and testing myself, but I did sat through two complete mock exams. I wanted to get the real feeling of, sitting for
Right.
4 hours
Mhm.
and knowing that you will be exhausted by the end of the exam. And you can only get the grasp of that feeling if you actually do it. So I did two full exams before sitting to the third one. And I think that's very important because it helps you to build the confidence that I lacked the first time I sat for the exam. I was
Mhm.
already, you know, confident that I had the knowledge, that I know how to respond to questions, that I know how to tackle them, that there's several ways to tackle them, and I was knowledgeable of it. So I was, feeling more secure when I sat down the second time.
Awesome. Awesome. Love that answer. I think two things that really stood out for me from your answer was uh, number one, taking the exam, sitting for that 4 hours, right? Taking the whole exam. That is very, very important. A lot of people don't understand the importance of being able to sit and focus for 4 hours at the same place. I mean, yeah, you can, of course, do practice questions every day, anytime that you find the time during the day, right? But being able to focus for 4 hours, that is something which is very, very important. And the second thing that I really liked was that you understood the fact that PMI wants you to think like a PMI certified project manager. That is very, very important because on our day to day work, if we face a situation and that situation is exactly what PMI question tells you about, the PMP question
Right.
tells you about, on your day to day job, you might be doing something totally opposite. But in the exam, you have to think like a PMP certified project manager, right? You have to have that kind of mindset. So, love that
Exactly.
answer. Let's briefly talk about some of the questions around the questions that you faced in the exam. So,
Sure.
roughly what percentage of scenario based questions did you see on the exam? Scenario based.
I think my take is that it was around 70% of the questions in my
Okay.
case.
Awesome.
I felt like most of the exam was scenario based questions,
Mhm.
and um, I was expecting that, so it didn't came much as a surprise.
It wasn't a surprise. Good. And what about mathematics? Like a lot of people are scared of calculation based questions. Did you get those?
I would say from the 180 questions, there were like three
Ah,
mathematical
okay.
questions, and they were very simple.
Mhm.
Meaning, there's this way of tackling mathematical questions that as soon as you begin your exam, you write down all the formulas
Right.
in your sheet, so you don't have to worry about memorizing them when the question pops. And um, I heard the comments from other people doing the exam that there were not too many questions and that they were very simple. And in my case, that did happen. I used the calculator just to make sure that just because of I was a bit nervous, I was not doing the calculations wrong. But there were, in my opinion, very simple questions, and there were only like three of them.
Awesome. Because that is the answer that I've been getting for the like last 3 or 4 years. The number of mathematical based questions has gone down drastically. So you don't have to be scared of mathematics. At
Exactly.
my when I took the PMP, it was just like the scenario that you mentioned. We would write down all the formulas because we would see anywhere from 15 to 20 mathematical based questions in the exam. But that's not the case these days.
No,
Anyways, what percentage of agile questions did you see on the exam?
I would say between 60 and 70% of the questions were agile.
Oh, okay.
Very important to identify them because
Mhm.
you need to know which mindset you need to grasp when answering the
Right.
question, and
Right.
identifying the keywords was a very uh, key part of it. But I thought that most of the questions between 60 and 70% were agile.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think that that area is again growing. Agile, the number of questions in agile, they are also growing for PMP exam aspirants that I speak to. I mean, people who have cleared their PMP exam. But anyways,
Yes.
so there are these newer type of questions which they never used to have. They've introduced this. I think it's been like 2 or 3 years now. you have multiple answer questions, you have graphical questions, match the column and all that. How many of those questions did you saw, and were they easy or were they difficult? How do you find them?
I was very surprised, Shoaib, to be very honest, because I got none of those questions.
Oh,
All my
okay.
questions were multiple choice. I was expecting, the graphs and all that, watch some videos from other people's experience on how these questions come from. And I was like going through the exam, and halfway through, I thought, where are these questions coming? Are they
Right.
coming towards the end? But I
Mhm.
didn't. All the questions were multiple choice.
Oh, awesome. I mean, that's new. That's strange as well. But
Yes.
anyways, overall, I mean, how would you rate the difficulty level of the exam? How difficult or easy do you think PMP really is?
I think it is a very hard exam
Mhm.
just because people tend to think that by having multiple choice answers, it is easier. But somehow PMI managed to make it harder just because
Right.
a lot of the answers look correct. So
Mhm.
I think it is a very tough exam, in my opinion,
Mhm.
one of the toughest exams I've done in my life, to be very honest.
Mhm.
And I think that this only proves that people who pass the exam are really prepared to be, a certified project manager.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely an exam that is deserving of coveted certification that it offers. When it comes to, we talk about the 4 hours allocated time frame that we have for the exam. Did you prepare any strategies on how you're going to ensure that you would complete all the questions in that time?
To be very honest, the practice questions gave me a good idea of what my numbers are.
Hmm.
So, for example, I knew that time was not going to be a constraint for me just because I was answering questions during practice and also the mock exams I did
Hmm.
under a minute, maybe 55
Awesome.
seconds. So I knew that time was not going to be a constraint. So, answering correctly was 57 seconds for me. Incorrect answers were a minute and 5 seconds.
Hmm.
So still within time, but you realize and start, analyzing yourself and say, when I start thinking too much, that's where I'm start to fail.
Yeah,
So
losing the time. Yeah.
time management was not an issue for me, but
Mhm.
because I already knew myself in that area before
Awesome,
sitting.
awesome. Yeah, that I think is again another advantage of taking up the mock exams. Now that you have passed your PMP, right? Now that you look back, was there something that you feel that you should have known earlier itself when you were starting your PMP preparation?
Yes, I think very important to my past self, I would say,
Hmm.
is to look for resources, not sticking to reading the PM book. I mean, of course, you have to read it and know what the content is and what they want you to know. But I think there's a lot of ways of learning, and that's where looking for resources is very important. And there are many out there, some of them free, some of them paid, but not sticking to the PM book and thinking that just because I read the PM book, I passed the exam. That's very incorrect. You need to look
Hmm.
for other resources. Before doing the exam, there's I was already a member of PMI, so you have access to other books
Yeah.
they used when making the questions. So I went through some of them, not reading them entirely, but sitting and reading um, um, discipline agile, especially choose your ways of working and stuff
Ways
like
of
this that
working.
they
Yeah.
have there. And I think that I would tell myself not stick to one methodology. Look for
Hmm.
other resources and look for videos, for example, in PMC Lounge, and um, not sticking only to PM Book. That's what I would tell
Awesome.
my past self.
Awesome, awesome. And when I ask people, I have someone who has recently passed their PMP exam. Should I ask them anything? One thing that everyone asks is, what are the top tips? What are the top 3 tips? So, my last question to you would be, what are your top 3 tips? Anyone who is preparing for the PMP exam, if they're watching this video, what are your tips for them?
Sure. I think the first one is do it in person. Do not do it online, as we discussed.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stories that you can hear. I will not tell mine, but proctors from Pearson View sometimes can be very mean. So the external factors, such as, for example, my dog barking in the back right now,
Mhm.
or the chainsaws at the neighborhood, and there are a lot of external factors that do depend on you, then the connection, everything. So
Right.
having the peace of sitting in the center and knowing that you're there, especially dedicated your time to that, you will have a proctor and all that. But it's very different the human interaction you have with a person when you have it in front, that it's only a chat from a proctor there
Right.
telling you do not touch your face during the exam, for example. It happened to me, and I was like, okay, this is very strict. The second one is that to do a lot of questions, as I mentioned, meaning getting to know what is your way of thinking during answering questions, getting prepared, doing a real mock exam, as I was telling, going through the actual experience of sitting for 4 hours and concentrate for this long. It's very hard to do. So do test yourself in this area of going through 4 hours of sitting nonstop, or maybe taking a small break. And also, I think the last tip would be to always schedule a part of the day for studying,
Mm.
meaning I would have the same time every day for months. Sometimes it could be reduced for an hour and a half, but at least an hour I was sitting every day. People say, I don't have much motivation right now to sit and study, but then I thought, well, motivation is not really needed. What you need is discipline and sitting every
Love
day
that.
to
Mhm.
actually study, work on different topics, and well, having that discipline of every day studying,
Mhm.
maybe taking 1 or 2 days of the weekend just to rest.
Wow, love that answer. Love that discipline piece for sure. And it has been fantastic interacting with you, Jack. Loved your story. And thank you so much for taking the time out. I'm pretty sure our community members, PMP aspirants, will be finding this video very, very helpful. So thanks again.
No, thank to you, and thank you for all the resources. It's a pleasure for me be talking to you right now after many, many hours of hearing your voice.
Awesome.